Hey everyone, welcome back. I hope you all are having a great Thanksgiving. Do y'all remember those movies that were kind of obscure and no one really remembered how you ended up with them? Usually your family just had a VHS tape and somehow that movie defined your childhood, but no one has any memory of where it came from. Well, that's what we're talking about today is Little Nemo, not to be confused with Finding Nemo. Little Nemo is a movie made in 1989 in Japan, but it was not released in the US until 1992. There were a lot of production issues. A lot of big names were reached out to work on the film, but ultimately turned them down. Names such as Chuck Jones and George Lucas. Eventually, Chris Columbus, who did some of the Harry Potter movies, was reached out to and accepted. He helped work on this film. It was directed by Masami Hata. This was a fantasy movie written for children. To give a synopsis of the movie, it follows a little boy named Nemo. Nemo has a very vivid imagination and has very vivid dreams. The adventure begins one night when Nemo wakes up in a dream to a servant from Dreamland who comes to invite him with a royal invitation. King Morpheus has invited Nemo to come be a playmate with his daughter Camille, Princess of Dreamland. Nemo's a little hesitant, but eventually accepts and goes on to Dreamland, where he then meets King Morpheus, who has a strange resemblance to Santa Claus and a lot of toys in his mansion, and it kind of gives a North Pole kind of feel. After meeting with King Morpheus, he eventually finds out he has been brought there to be the heir of Dreamland. King Morpheus plans to make him Prince of Dreamland and eventually become king when he retires. He then gives Nemo a key with a dragon on it. He says this key opens any door in Dreamland, but he says there's one door in particular to never open. This door holds back the darkness, or the nightmare. Nemo then goes on to Prince Training, where he is given lessons with sword fighting books, how to eat properly, how to act properly, things like that. In the meantime, he runs into the movie troublemaker Flip, voiced by Mickey Rooney, and Flip goes on to get Nemo in trouble, filling his head with ideas and fantasies, and eventually gets Nemo to open the door. When he opens the door, he can't reach the key at the top. They leave the door unlocked. Nemo goes to the coronation party, where he is given the royal scepter to hold. The royal scepter is the only thing that is able to defeat the nightmare. During the party, the darkness slips out of the door and overtakes the entire party, where everyone is swallowed up into the nightmare world. Nemo escapes, waking up in his bed, but is then floating on water. Nemo links back up with some of his friends he finds that survived the initial attack, and they head off to Nightmare Land to save the king and the other inhabitants of Dreamland. Nemo goes on a heroic battle with the scepter where he tries to defeat the nightmare, which ends up taking his own life with the nightmare's life. King Morpheus then retrieves the scepter where he brings Nemo back to life. Nemo apologizes for betraying the king's trust and opening the door. All is forgiven, and then a party is thrown at the end to celebrate. And then, like any good prince that is training to take over being a king, he leaves with no explanation and no return date. He leaves with Princess Camille, where they float over the city where Nemo lives while Nemo looks down, and then Nemo wakes up from his dream. Overall, it was a pretty great movie. There are a lot of elements I did enjoy. There were some problems with the story, but hey, it's a kid's movie. Such as one, why would you give a child who knows nothing about the kingdom a key to open the most dangerous door in the kingdom? It's kind of like giving a child a suitcase with a vial of Ebola in it and saying, hey, under no circumstances do you open this suitcase, and giving them zero context of why they should not open that suitcase. You're just asking for trouble. So fail on King Morpheus's part there. What I did enjoy a lot about this movie was the aesthetic and the overall dreamlike feel. If you were like me and had an overactive imagination as a child, this really hits home. The directors, screenplay writers, animators did a phenomenal job at creating a world and imagery that felt like the things you dreamed about as a kid, the things you daydreamed about. They did very well with the aesthetic and the backgrounds and just the little, not randomness, but just the little dream sequence features that were just really, really well done. It felt like you were looking at things through a child's eyes, and it really took me back. Also, what they did very well was distinguishing between dreams and the nightmares, but also during the dream sequences, there is the scene where Nemo is learning to become Prince, and he's taking all of his lessons, and you can really see it in his eyes where he's trying to have fun and live in this dream world and play, but then he's also working on the things that are expected of him. You know, these social influences that come from the outside that are making their way into his dreams, of expectations from family. You can be more, you can do better. You know, what you're doing now isn't enough. You know, learn, get better, do. And I think a lot of children go through that. Some of it's good, some of it's bad. I mean, you are being taught to grow, and then sometimes there's too many expectations and you aren't just allowed to be a child and have fun. I think this movie does a very good job at showing that balance of his dreamlike state, but also the anxieties and pressures of the outside world, and then the nightmare of something completely different. So you have all these elements mixing on what's going on in the mind of a child. The movie kind of has a Kiki's Delivery Service and Alice in Wonderland kind of vibe going to it. So if you enjoy things like that, this movie does have that feel. This movie was considered a box office bomb, but it did go on to become a cult classic on VHS and did very well in VHS sales. Overall, I think the rewatchability of this movie was probably a 6.5 or a 7 out of 10. I very much enjoyed watching it this time around. I would watch it with my kids. I would recommend it for a little bit of older kids. Some of the nightmare sequences were pretty intense for a kid's movie, but it was a great movie. And I would recommend checking it out. It is on Tubi where you can watch it for free. The movie does have a lot of good humor to it. So overall, I do recommend it. It did hold up. I hope you all enjoy it. If any of you love the movie, have any fond memories of it or any comments, please leave them in the below. Remember to like and subscribe. I hope you all have a great Thanksgiving, and thanks for watching.